In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front lower control arms with the ball joints on this Fiat 500. To do this, we actually have to remove the front bumper to get to some of the hardware that covers up this front bolt. After this job is performed, don't forget to get in alignment. At the top of the bumper cover on the radiator support, there are 4 T30 headed screws or bolts. Let's remove all of them. There's 2 on each side. On the side of the front bumper where it meets the fender liner, you'll see 3 Phillips head screws. We have to remove all 3 of them. Turning the wheels in the opposite direction that you're working in will give you a lot more clearance to work with. This will allow you to peel the fender liner off and gain access to the T30 bolt that holds the bumper cover onto the fender. In my case, the mounting nut at the top is spinning, not something that should typically happen, but if it does for you, you'll have to use a 9mm wrench to hold it while removing the T30 bolt going through it. There it is. Right behind the fender, let's disconnect the bulb for this side marker, press on the tab, and unplug the connector. Underneath the bumper cover on the corner, also where it meets the fender liner, there's a Phillips head screw that we have to remove. And then underneath the front of the bumper cover on the lower radiator support, you'll have 3 T30 Torx bolts, just like the ones on the top. Here's a tip for these lower Torx bolts. Take a pick or a wire brush and clean out the inside of the cutout where the Torx bit goes so that you can actually put it in there, since this collects a lot of debris, because if it doesn't go all the way in, it's very likely to strip it out. On the corner of the bumper cover, right where it meets the fender, grab onto it and pull it out. There's a couple clips right along here that need to pop out. They can be fairly tough. And there we go. We'll do the same on the other side, but make sure you don't pull it out too far so the bumper cover doesn't fall off. Grab the bumper cover and lift it up a little bit so you can pull it forward. However, you can't go too far, because if your vehicle has fog lights, you're going to have to disconnect them, the wiring harness that is, before you go too far. The fog light connector is underneath right here. There's a tab that locks it in right on the side. Press it and pull this connector. Now you can pull the bumper cover away. Now let's remove the wheel, and if your vehicle has these hubcaps, you're going to need a pry bar of some sort to remove the hubcap. Stick it underneath one of the areas that has the clamps that hold on. You can see them through the little openings. Try to be gentle. Pry a little bit at a time and walk it off. Try not to break it, of course. All right, pull it off, and now that exposes the 4 17mm headed lug bolts. Take those off. So what we have to do next is actually remove this piece, which is bolted to the subframe on this side and bolted to the front core support on this side, because it actually covers up the through bolt going into the front bushing. So there's no other way to remove that bolt to get the control arm out. We got a couple bolts in the rear, 4 in the front, and then this bracket that goes from the body of the vehicle down to here. I'll leave this for last so I can hold it on. And then with this removed, we can continue working on the control arm. There are 4 14mm bolts on the front. Let's remove all 4 of these. Hold this bracket so it doesn't fall off when you take the last one out. There are two 18mm headed bolts right here that we have to remove. They go through the subframe, and like I said, clamp this bracket on, remove them both. Now this bracket has two 15mm headed bolts. Remove them both, especially this lower one. The top one you might be able to just unthread a little bit, but I'm just going to remove them both. There we go, that's out of our way now, and we can pull this right out. The bolt that goes through the front of the control arm is an E18 socket. That's an inverted Torx. So we'll get a little extension with the socket on there. We'll break it free and remove it. Now on the knuckle side, the control arm ball joint has a pinch bolt that we have to remove. Use a 17mm socket with a 17mm wrench on the other side to hold the mounting nut from spinning and remove the bolt. A lot of times these seize up, so I took the nut off, but the bolt will have to get driven out either with a punch or just keep turning it and spray rust penetrant on it until it breaks free and you can push it out. There it is. Inspect these bolts because a lot of times they'll rust right here in the middle, and if they corrode away and become weak, don't reuse them. Get a new one that's the same grade as the factory bolt and replace them. But this one's all right, I'll just clean it up. Take a chisel and hammer it right in here. This is going to open up where the pinch bolt goes through and therefore allow the ball joint to be removed a lot easier. To remove this ball joint, you could put a chisel in here and try to spread this a little bit, but if that doesn't work, you can just spray it with rust penetrant, take a hammer or rubber mallet, tap this down as you put pressure on it, and it should walk itself out. Pull the control arm down, move the knuckle aside. There's another inverted Torx E18 headed bolt on the back of the control arm. Goes straight up through the subframe. Let's remove this. You're also going to want to use an 18mm wrench to hold the mounting nut that's on the top. Now, remove the control arm from the vehicle. There it is. It's a good idea to clean the hole where the ball joint goes through the knuckle just to remove any rust and debris that's in there, and then we're going to coat it with an anti-corrosive coating so it doesn't corrode in the future. I'm using a bore brush. You could just use anything else that you might have, a piece of sandpaper, and just spin it around in there to clean it all up. Rinse it off with brake parts cleaner. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize, like I said, to prevent corrosion from building up in the future. Also, this is going to help the ball joint slide in a whole lot better and easier, and right through this bolt hole as well to prevent the bolt from getting all rusted out. There we go. A thin layer will go a long way. Let's grab the new control arm and slide it back in the same way the old one came out. You're going to have to find the right angle to put it in through. Once you have the control arm in on the rear, you can use a long, narrow punch to center up that bolt hole. Tap the bolt through. Don't tighten this, but I'm going to put the mounting nut on just so it can stay mounted in place. And then we can take this, twist it, turn it, and mount it on the front. Just like that. Now pull the knuckle away. Be very careful of the ball joint boot so it doesn't break if it gets caught on anything. Now with a rubber mallet, continue tapping it in until that lines up. Now before we put that front bolt in, we're going to have to put the ball joint through just so we can get enough swing out of that control arm. Try to get it to walk in. If you tap it, don't tap on the center of the ball joint, tap on the control arm. All right, that's all the way through. Put your pinch bolt through and the mounting nut on the other side, which we can now go ahead and tighten. 17 socket and 17 wrench just to hold on to this, tighten it up. The torque on this pinch bolt is going to be 48 foot-pounds. If that nut spins, hold it. All right, now let's line up this front bolt. Stick it through. Thread it in. Don't tighten it though. This has to be torqued at right height. There we go. We'll leave it like that. Because I'm on a lift, I'm using a pole jack to raise this control arm up at right height. If you're on the ground, just use a floor jack. Put a piece of wood or rubber, whatever you have in between the control arm and the pad on your jack, just so you don't damage anything, and definitely don't push on the ball joint. Raise this up approximately at right height, just so you can get those bushings lined up better so you don't put them under permanent tension if you were to torque them down with this lowered. Let's snug these up. The torque on this one, both of them actually, but we'll start with this one, is going to be 80 foot-pounds and an additional 45 degrees. If you don't have a digital torque wrench that reads degrees, that's about 1/8 of a turn. Let's start with 80. Because we're doing degrees next, it's important that your 80 foot-pounds is set properly. Otherwise, the degrees from there are not going to equate to the proper torque spec that the manufacturer wanted. So double check that, and now let's do 45 degrees. I have a digital torque wrench that reads degrees, but mark your bolt if you don't have one, and just eyeball it with a ratchet or a breaker bar, 1/8 of a turn. That's it. Let's do the same to the rear bolt. Tighten it up first, and then torque it to 80 foot-pounds and 45 degrees. When I torque this, my mounting nut on top did not spin. It's important that you watch it, because if it does spin, you want to hold it. Otherwise, you're not going to get an accurate torque spec. That's 80 foot-pounds. Let's add 45 degrees. That's it. Remove your support. Now let's get this piece back in, slide it through the subframe, line it up with these two bolts, and let's start them in. Bring this bracket back down and line it up. Let's start this bolt in. Now from the front, put this on. Should have a couple clips that hold it on, and start in the bolts. You're gonna have to push this up to get the threads to line up. Start these in one at a time. Now let's tighten these up, and once this is situated properly and lined up, we can do the rest. 14 millimeter on these. Let's torque these front bolts to 30 foot-pounds. Let's tighten these two up on this bracket. And torque these to 35 foot-pounds. Let's snug these up. Torque these down to 60 foot-pounds. Let's put the wheel back on, line it up, press it on, put on all 4 lug bolts. We'll torque these to 63 foot-pounds if you have the steel wheels like this, or if you have aluminum wheels, it'll be 75 foot-pounds, both in a cross pattern to seat the wheel properly. Because we have steel wheels, I'm going to torque these to 63 foot-pounds, but if you have aluminum wheels, once again, 75 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Double check them. Let's put on the hubcap. You'll see that it has a little cutout on this spring and even a little diagram that shows you where the valve stem is supposed to line up with. Otherwise, it won't really fit through every other cutout. So you want to make sure you line that up and press it on. Now let's bring the bumper cover closer. Make sure you don't scratch anything. And once you're close enough, you'll be able to get the fog light connector reconnected. You won't be able to pull it very far, but just find the plug for it and press it until it clicks on. At this point, you could also just plug in your marker light as well, since you're here. Do the same to the other side. Grab onto the bumper cover and gently slide it on, making sure it lines up and of course isn't gonna scratch anything. There we go. Once it's centered up, you can go over to each side, lift it up and over the clips that are in there and tap it in. That's going to lock it into place. We'll do the same on the other side to secure it. Let's resecure all the screws up top since we're here. Make sure everything's lined up. Snug them down. Now peel the fender liner away and stick in the bolt that clamps it into the fender up here. This is the one that we had some trouble with. For me, this is spinning again, so I'm going to use my 9mm wrench just to hold it in place. Snug these two up, not much, just a little bit. And put the fender liner back where it belongs so we can secure it with the Phillips head screws all along the side. Start these on. You don't need to make these very tight, just snug them up a little bit. Let's install the Phillips head screw that goes in from underneath. Snug it up. And the 3 Torx bolts from underneath. There you have it.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.